YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Today, we're going over one realistic move every team should make at the NFL trade deadline. So some teams I have trading for a player, some teams trading away a player. Can't wait to break it down team by team. We have a recent trade deadline video already up covering the candidates of the deadline, which is a lot this year. It's crazy. So check that video out. More deadline videos to come with scenarios, predictions, landing spots. We've been pretty accurate with our deadline predictions the last few years. So really excited about it. Like, subscribe to notifications on to join us for all that and our weekly coverage, including weekly picks and a lot more there. Any links you're looking for pinned in the comment section, including our Twitter, which we have live news, rumors, especially for the deadline. So you're definitely going to want to follow that. Picks League, sponsors, pinned in the comments. You see I'm rocking the GLD Bucks chain here. They have every NFL team. They have NFL players coming out now. Real Gold, 33% off, code GOAT. Very affordable. Also have a code GOAT for Liquid IV. Again, links for those things pinned in the comments section. So we're going by, we'll start with the AFC East teams. So the Jets, I have the move they should make at the deadline is trading for Daron Payne, the nose tackle from the Washington Commanders. The Jets actually brought in Linval Joseph. This was actually a couple hours ago for a visit, so it looks like they're looking for a nose tackle. I feel like they're always looking for defensive linemen, but they're definitely looking for a nose tackle to pair with Quinn Williams and Sheldon Rankins. And Daron Payne would make a lot of sense. The Jets they're in win now mode because they're playing very, very well here. Are they in win Super Bowl now mode? Probably not, obviously, but they're trying to compete. There was talks about Payne possibly being a trade candidate before the season, and I think it's, with an expiring deal, it's very possible that the Commanders move on from Payne. So it made sense to me. The Jets kind of looking for that type of player. They get a lot better on already a really good defensive line. Payne is a very stout nose tackle here. So, and then if they like him, they can extend him too. They can definitely do that. So I thought that made sense there. So could the Jets be buyers? That's definitely a possibility. Next, the Patriots can go multiple directions. I went with Shaq Thompson here. Trade for the Panthers linebacker, which we know the Panthers are kind of having a fire sale, and there's some guys they wouldn't trade. I know Shaq Thompson's pretty important to them, but it sounds like they would deal him. And the Patriots are looking to get better at the linebacker position. They got some young guys that are still trying to get better there, but I think Thompson would really upgrade that group, and they're already playing pretty good ball on defense, so this would improve them quite a bit more, and he's got some good experience blitzing too. We know Belichick likes to blitz, and they know they want to run a lot of man coverage. Thompson, coming from the Panthers, familiar with running a lot of man coverage as well. So they kind of get creative with him. He's fit more of a 4-3 in the past. The Patriots give a multiple look. They'll show different looks, so I think they can make it work for sure. I thought about putting up here, trading away a guy like Kendrick Bourne because they're not going to really need him. They got other receivers stepping up, and he's under contract next year, so kind of get rid of that. That could be a key one as well. If we're talking linebackers, maybe trade for Roquan Smith, maybe a bigger name guy. But I don't know. It's a little risky. It could end up being a rental because he's not going to fit every scheme, and then you got to pay him big money next year. Are the Patriots in position to be doing a rental type thing? And they could extend him. They got a lot of money next year, but I don't know if it's a guarantee he'll fit in that defense there. So I thought Shaq Thompson made a lot more sense. They can have him for next year. Should be a better fit. He's cheaper when it comes to the money and when it comes to what you have to trade away. So actually, I haven't heard anything about this. It's just something I really, really like here, and I think it's possible. So we'll see. Patriots can do a number of things there. Trading Nelson Aguilar is another one. The Bills trade for Kareem Hunt. They were in on McCaffrey. They weren't in on him all the way down to the wire. It seemed like at the end it was the Niners who got McCaffrey and the Rams. The Bills were actually one of the first teams to call, though, and the asking price was just too much, so they kind of backed off. But they were definitely interested, just getting better at the position, and it's kind of clear, with McCaffrey, them having interest in him, they kind of wanted just an all-around good back, guy that can catch the ball very well too. So that's why Kareem Hunt kind of made some sense here. Also thought about Antonio Gibson from the Commanders. Guy like Cam Akers doesn't make a ton of sense. I mean, you kind of already got guys that are pretty solid. Why add another one of those? It's kind of go big or go home. Like, Hunt is a legit running back. He just happens to be sharing with a very legit running back in Nick Chubb. So that, the Bills are trying to win a Super Bowl. So adding another piece like this could actually make a ton of sense. I thought another guy that I thought of is Jordan Fuller, safety from the Rams. I thought, with Hyde out for the season, they're going to need another safety that's experienced at free safety there. which they do run a lot of split coverage, split safety. So, but I thought that actually made some sense. The Rams aren't playing them that much, but a little bit of a smaller one. Here's a bigger one here for the Bills. Maybe that a little tight on the cap though, but they were possibly willing to trade for McCaffrey, so they may make a splash move like this. Will the Browns trade Kareem Hunt, especially to a kind of an AFC powerhouse too? That's kind of the big question there though. But there's been some rumors, especially before the season started, so it's definitely possible. Next, Dolphins. Yeah, I thought about having them add maybe a corner or a pass rusher. That's definitely a possibility. There's none out there. I mean, I don't want to say none, but the guys out there that are kind of rumored to be available at the deadline, I don't know if I love for the Dolphins. I guess a corner that has stood out and has been linked to them is maybe like a guy like William Jackson, who wants out of the Commanders. He wants to go to a team that runs a lot more man coverage, and the Dolphins run a ton of man coverage. So that kind of makes sense. But William Jackson's still a little bit of a project. He's nothing guaranteed. The Commanders, when they signed him, it was kind of off potential. He didn't reach that potential. So it's a little bit of a mystery on how he can be. But bigger point is that he's under contract for next year. It's going to be around like a $12 million cap hit, while the Dolphins will be paying, guys like Xavier Howard, who's a sure thing starter, and Byron Jones, who's very stout. If he's healthy, just isn't healthy at the moment. So do they want to go trade for a guy like William Jackson when he's under contract next year as well, and he's not really a guarantee of how good he'll be? That's the tricky part. Some of these pass rushers, I mean, could they make a move for like a Jerry Hughes? There's nothing that's big, splash move there. I thought it just made sense to move from Gesicki. I mean, they could use him for the rest of the year, but they're not using him a whole lot. And, get something for him right now. I think there's some teams that could use a tight end out there if you let him walk, with him being limited during this year. I think his price, like the value of his contract, is going down. Therefore, the compensatory pick you get, which will be in the future, is probably going down. Where if you trade him now, while his stock is he still has some value to him, and then remember they had to forfeit a first round pick. They're not going to get a first out of Gesicki, but if you trade him now, you get a pick for this year. That kind of helps right now. But again, it's tough because they're trying to win right now, and they're better with him than I suppose without him. Could they add a cheaper tight end? It's a possibility. But yeah, I was really going for them adding a guy like a corner. I just haven't really loved the options for them that are available. I love some options that aren't realistic. You see a lot of people, you look up trade scenarios online, it's just a bunch of unrealistic things. So we're trying to keep it pretty realistic here. Next, the Commanders trade William Jackson. We actually just talked about William Jackson a little bit, but yeah, he doesn't want to play for them. Hasn't really been great for them anyways. He's got a little bit of a pricey deal next year as well, so it makes sense. And the Commanders aren't winning anything major right now anyway, so it would make sense to trade him away and get something for him right now. So I think we could expect a trade to happen with William Jackson. So it's definitely one that's very realistic here for the Commanders. Next, the Giants. Yeah, a little short on the receivers because Galladay's not giving them much of anything, and they got some injuries on top of that, obviously, and they're just getting Wan'Dale Robinson back. But they could use another receiver, obviously a different style than a Wan'Dale Robinson, and maybe a little bit different than Slayton, too, who's kind of a speedy, deep ball guy. So adding Bourne in there. And what I liked about this, he's kind of on the cheaper side, which the Giants don't want to go crazy with the spending. We know that. And on top of that, a lot of the cheaper options they have are going to be free agents next year. But Bourne has another kind of a friendly deal on his contract for next year, so the Giants could also use him next year. So I thought that made some sense there. They're not going to go big they're not airing it out a ton of times a game, so they're not going to go crazy with adding a receiver on top of them not really wanting to spending a whole bunch of money right now, because they're still, even though they're looking really good this year, they're still kind of a team of the future. So I thought Bourne made a lot of sense for those reasons. There's been rumors that they could trade Slayton. I really don't think they do it. Kadarius Toney's kind of been rumored here and there. It's a possibility. I thought about, could they add an inside linebacker? Perhaps they had to pick up Jalen Smith recently. They've been playing him. He's been decent, but they could look to upgrade there. So I thought a corner, another outside corner, they could definitely possibly add. It'd probably be on the cheaper side, but maybe like a Bryce Hall from the Jets, a little New York trade. It's possible. I just thought Bourne, for the reasons I explained, made some sense there. They definitely need another receiver. Cowboys, a little tricky here, but I went with Riley Reif, who's on the Bears. The Bears aren't playing him. They're kind of just trying to, because they're kind of in rebuild. They're trying to develop their younger guys at the tackle position. It makes a lot of sense. And now they have Reif to be able to trade for kind of a cheap cost. The Cowboys, Tyler Smith's been playing very well, filling at left tackle. They have Jason Peters as well, but they really like Tyler Smith in the interior spot. Jason Peters has that injury concern, and the Cowboys have the experience of the kind of they have the I guess they've experienced it at the worst times. Their offensive linemen getting injured. So a team that is one of the better teams in the NFC right now, it would kind of make sense to go get a cheaper tackle option here for that could honestly play right away because he's pretty decent. He can play left or right tackle, and you kind of get some insurance there as well. Kind of look at the interior defensive lineman for them. There's not too many solid, available ones besides a guy like Deron Payne. I don't see the Commanders trading the Cowboys Deron Payne. I really like who I like is Shaq Thompson, fitting that Cowboys defense very, very well. I just don't see them doing it because they're pretty good at, in that area. And that Thompson would be an addition that they just get better. It wasn't like a giant need, but they just get better with. I just don't really see them doing it, but I would love the fit there. Reef made some sense, but they could sit there and say, hey, we got Tyler Smith's playing very well, and we have Jason Peters still. We obviously have Steele starting at right tackle, but they got to remember what's been happening. They got to remember it's worth a shot, going and get a guy like Reef here, in my opinion. The Eagles, Jerry Hughes of the Texans, been actually playing pretty well for them. He's been, he's a veteran with a good experience. He's always been known for getting pressure, but maybe not getting the quarterback down as much as he could, but he can get pressure. And the Eagles are just known for having their rotation, like their crazy rotation of edge rushers, and they really could be looking for another one, obviously, in there. Remember Derek Barnett got hurt a few weeks ago. He's out, so they could add a guy like Hughes with the experience because they know they're going to be in the playoffs. Eagles are feeling very confident they're going to be in the playoffs right now. Let's get that extra body in there. Remember Graham had that injury last year. They're not playing him a crazy amount of snaps right now because he's up there in age. They don't want to overdo it. So adding another guy in there with the other guy, they have a pretty good group already, but the Eagles just love their rotation. They're always trying to add more guys like this. I thought about maybe a running back, maybe a guy like Cam Akers. I think they like their backs right now, but they're always looking for more. I thought about that as well. They don't have much safety depth, but who they go out and get just for depth, that's kind of the question there. But I thought Jerry Hughes made some sense for the Eagles. The Ravens, I went David Montgomery. I really like this fit a lot, too. The Bears running back with the Ravens. And everyone's saying that every time there's a receiver available, people go, Ravens, but they never, ever get those receivers. They're very stubborn with the receivers, obviously. They went and signed Deshaun Jackson. They definitely could be. They definitely can make some calls on some of these receivers that are available. How many are actually available, though? We know Chase Claypool is available. There's no way in hell they're training the Ravens. It's a guy they would probably like, And in terms of the running back position, J.K. Dobbins injured, re-injured, has to have some minor surgery. He's going to be out for, about 6 weeks. And he didn't look right, even when he was in there. And then you have Gus Edwards just coming back, who's a solid back, but you can't really trust. Drake ran well last week, but he's been extremely inconsistent before that. Just feels like they got a bunch of injury concerns and a bunch of high-end RB2s at the moment. I know Edwards could be very solid for them, but it's been some time since he played. And then kind of just, what are the Ravens about? They're about running the football. Lamar can still do that at a high level, obviously, but the running game has been a little inconsistent so far. If you look from the running backs, if you look at the season so far, it's due to injuries and it's due to not having a consistent back in there, So and then they could use a back for next year. You get Montgomery, who I think will fit the system. They have a lot of power running, which the Bears did actually last year. This year, not so much, and that's why Herbert's a little bit more of a fit. He's got an expiring deal, so the Bears could be moving on from him. I think he fits the Ravens, like I just said. They kind of give him a trial, and they're going to need a running back next year. Even if Dobbins and Edwards is there, they're going to need a back, just to get better and have a healthy guy. So do they extend Montgomery? And you look at the running backs in free agency next year. I mean, there's some beautiful fits for the Ravens. Got like Josh Jacobs, could look like one of the best backs in football if he was in the Ravens. Definite fit as well. So you don't want to go trade for a guy maybe that has a lengthy deal. I think Montgomery would make some sense here. I really like the fit. And on top of it's a bigger need. People view the Ravens like they got a number of running backs. They got a number of non-durable, maybe high-end running back twos. This kind of get them back on track, which can get the whole offense back on track, the whole team back on track here. So I like Montgomery for them. I guess Antonio Gibson would make some sense, too, from the Commanders if he's available. So interesting team to watch here. not a whole lot of cap to work with, but we'll see what they do. The Browns, Daron Payne, another team I would like for it to attack Daron Payne because they definitely need, I've been saying it for the last like 2 years at least. They are for some reason shying away from adding a much needed interior player, and I think people are talking about more and more now. Like it's kind of more obvious now they need an interior player. Daron Payne, a fantastic nose tackle, obviously that could. Not just one of those nose tackles that's just only on the field in short yardage or first down. Like you can play him on pretty much every down there too. Expiring deal. Commanders could be looking to trade him. The Browns have the money this year to definitely pay him. Thought about some pass rushers too because it's pretty much just Garrett and Clowney and that's about it. Some young guys in there, but definitely need some more insurance in there. So I thought about guys like Dwayne Smoot from the Jags, Cleveland Farrell from the Raiders, Jerry Hughes from the Texans. Guys like that make sense, but maybe a receiver. They could look at another receiver, but I thought Daron Payne, it's a big need, and it just makes a ton of sense at the same time. So, Payne for the Browns. Steelers, I think maybe the Steelers would be sellers, but I actually had him as a buyer in this scenario here. Getting a guy like Bryce Hall, the cornerback from the Jets, who is, depth right now because their starting corners are very, very solid. And maybe he fits more of a man team, but that can mix it up a little bit. And there you go. It's the Steelers. They're very beat up at the cornerback position, number one. They kind of can just need a corner in general. That's number two. They could use a guy for the future as well. And they got some free agents coming up. And it doesn't really make sense to me to trade for a guy like William Jackson because then they got to pay him. You probably got to pay more to trade for that type of guy, which the Steelers, they're not going to win anything this year. They kind of want their higher end picks. Not that Jackson's going to be a high end pick, but you get my point. And then they're going to pay Jackson next year. I don't think they've ever been a fan of paying big money to corners, and their pass rush will create for the corners. So just get guys that kind of fit, that have some upside, cheaper deals, and that's why all of the above. Bryce Hall just makes a lot of sense there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they can use him now, they can use him in the future, and it's a cheaper option. So again, that's why it made some sense there. The Bengals, how about this? William Jackson, who left the Bengals in free agency a few years ago for the Commanders. He was very solid for the Bengals, but he was still, a little inconsistent, kind of a work in progress, upside type of guy. And the Bengals, like, hey, we want to put our money elsewhere. We don't want to spend big, lengthy contract on a corner. Maybe they're more of a fan of going 1 or 2 year deal and not super, super expensive. But now the Bengals definitely could use another corner. I know they have Eli Apple's been better than expected, but you could look to upgrade from there. Obviously, they like Awuzie on the other side for sure than Mike Hilton in the slot, but give some competition to Eli Apple, really an upgrade. And they know he fits the Bengals. For sure, and now he's only got 1 more year left on his deal. He's cheap this year. It's a little pricey next year, but I think it's something the Bengals would be interested in being okay, I should say, in paying. So, maybe some offensive lineman for the Bengals. Do they bring another guy back like Riley Reif? It's a possibility. Something I learned about the Bengals, though, whenever they get even if their offensive line's not that good, the guys they put together, they kind of insist on those guys for the season. So it's something I've kind of noticed. I think they would be in on an interior player like a guard. There is just no guards available. Maybe there's a secret one out there, one that will be. There's no guards available right now. There's a lot of teams that could use one, and there's a shortage apparently. Lions trade Michael Brockers. This would be massive. This would be massive for the Lions here because they shouldn't be trading for things right now, in my opinion. They're still kind of a team of the future. They've been drafting pretty well. They're just trying to develop those guys, so get some more draft picks here. It'd be a very cheap draft pick, low draft pick, but Brockers has another year on his deal. It's going to be tough to trade him, though, because of that, because it's a little pricey. Teams probably don't want to pay it. Maybe they can trade for him and agree to remove that contract year, that last year on the deal. But it'd be nice for them because they're not really playing him that much right now. They play him a little bit. They're trying to play the young guys, which makes sense. So that'd be big if the Lions can move on from Brockers. Bears, I could put a number of guys here. I went with Roquan Smith. Trade him away. I could have put Montgomery here. I could have put Robert Quinn here. Riley Reif. I think they're going to trade Riley Reif. I think that was actually a hell of a job. I think they signed Riley Reif just to trade him at the deadline because they realize that we can afford him now, meaning before the season. And then we know teams that don't really want to pay him right now, they're going to get beat up with the offensive line position because it always happens. So that actually might be genius if that's what happens here with the Bears. But I put Roquan, and I think most people probably would expect Robert Quinn because he has multiple years left on his deal, and it's a little pricey. But the Bears have a load of cap space in the future, especially next year, like an insane amount, like over $100 million in cap space. So it's not like they're desperate to move on from some money, and Robert Quinn could contribute to them in the future. Not that he's, by the time they're kind of getting, which teams turning around pretty quickly these days, but will he be a big factor by the time they turn around? Different debate though. But they could afford him, and they would probably get a lower pick for him anyways if they trade him right now, which would be good to trade him, but it's not really the must in my opinion. I look at, David Montgomery, it's looking like Herbert fits their new system a little bit more, and they would have to sign Montgomery after this year because he's a free agent to you might ask for a decent amount. I don't know if I see the Bears doing that, so get a pick for him now. And there's teams desperate for running backs on top of it, so it actually probably can beat the compensatory pick that you would get in not even this 2023, it would be 2024. So Montgomery would make a lot of sense. But I went with Roquan Smith, another one that I don't think is as much of a fit anymore. The Bears already showed they didn't want to pay him the big money that he's looking for, and he's been hot and cold so far this year. It's like, all right, he's not looking as good. Is it because he's rusty, because he sat out? And then it's starting to look like, all right, he just doesn't fit the scheme. Then he has a pretty good moment, pretty good game, and not so much, So I don't think they are going to pay him long term, and I don't think they view him as a fit. And I think he's really only going to fit as an inside linebacker in a 3-4. And there could be teams that want to beat other teams to the free agency of Roquan Smith next year. So I think this could be a good opportunity for a Bears team that's in rebuild mode to get a pretty strong pick. But I could have definitely put David Montgomery up here as well. But the Bears will definitely be sellers at the deadline, that is for sure. The Vikings, who are dead last in cap space, so I don't really expect something big or a splash move. It sounds like they're trying to find a tight end still. Their tight end's been a little inconsistent. Albert O of the Broncos, who looked kind of promising maybe at the end of last year, and we kind of thought he might be something this year. It just looks like the new coaching staff doesn't really love him as a fit. They're using other tight ends more. Cheaper option. The Vikings could use another guy in there, so I went with that route. A guy like Austin Hooper could be available as well, but kind of a young, cheap route here in Albert O, so I thought that made some sense for the Vikings. If they had the cap, I think Gesicki would make a lot of sense there as well, but they just don't have the space unless the Dolphins want to pay a chunk of that, perhaps. We'll see. I love the fit of Chase Claypool and the Packers. Just feels like an Aaron Rodgers type of receiver here, a better version of Lazard with a lot of upside, which you can use both, of course. Lazard being their best receiver right now. And Claypool has the upside. He has the talent. We saw it right away when he came in as a rookie. The quarterback play just really dropped pretty fast for the Steelers there. So I think could be a do-it-all type receiver, and would love him on the Packers. There's some reports earlier today that they're looking for basically a haul, maybe something close, not maybe exactly, but something close to what the Panthers got, or the Panthers got for McCaffrey, and I don't think a team's going to do that. But I think the Steelers could possibly come down on that, and I value Claypool, maybe more than a lot of people out there. I think it'd be big for the Packers. The only downside is, there was some rumors that the Packers logo looks really weird with that, the bar going across it. I just realized that. Off topic, there's been some rumors that Rodgers could retire. I think that's like every year though. Could retire after this year or sometime soon. And then if you trade for Claypool, then you kind of scrambling for, and you're gonna have to extend him at one point, and then you're kind of scrambling for a quarterback possibly in the future. But I don't know if that's really a negative, because I think you can kind of keep Claypool around and help whoever the future receiver is. So I just really love the fit. The Packers got to be interested in Claypool. They got to be interested in some receivers, but how many are this good? How many receivers that are legit available are this good and will have that much upside? Really not many at all, maybe none. Colts, another Riley Reif one here. Their offensive line has struggled. They're kind of mixing, matching guys around, at the tackle positions. I mean, you see him moving Braden Smith, who's a very solid right tackle, into guard, which he could play guard, obviously. So they could use another tackle in there. Riley Reif happens so that he can play both sides, left and right tackle. And then a guy like Matt Pryor, who they've used this year, is also a free agent at the end of this year. I don't think they'll be attached to Ryman and forcing him in there really in the future, because he's a third-round pick. And he has upside. He could be the guy. But I think adding a guy like Reif for this year, because they're competing for that AFC South, it just makes a lot of sense there. They could use a receiver, but I don't think they need a receiver, because if they thought they needed a receiver, they would have signed T.Y. Hilton by now. Maybe they're waiting until the second half of the year to sign him, but they're starting to use Paris Campbell more and more, Alec Pierce, on top of already having Michael Pittman. So maybe they sign T.Y. Hilton coming up, possibly. Titans, we just talked about Chase Claypool for the Packers. This is a little bit of a bold one, maybe. I threw Chase Claypool for the Titans. Only thing I've heard about Titans is they could trade Austin Hooper, which could be good. They're not using him much. I'm surprised. I feel like he really fit their system. Maybe they can use him more, not trade him, but they would probably get something very little for him, but they could do that. But maybe it's hard to see the Titans make a big splash move. They don't have a lot of cap space, but Claypool is still on the rookie contract. He's a little cheaper. Traylon Burks is a different style receiver than Claypool, but he's injured right now. It's pretty much Robert Woods. Out there, they could definitely use a piece like Claypool. They don't have that kind of contested catch, big body guy. I know Burks they hope is kind of a do-it-all type guy, but so far kind of seems like big body slot guy, end arounds, things like that. And he's going to be able to do more, don't get me wrong here, and he's injured right now. So adding a guy like Claypool definitely could be big. And look at Robert Woods. He's got some years on his contract, but 0 of it is guaranteed starting next year. So they can decide any given time if they want to move on from him out, save that money, and they can add a guy like Claypool, which they already need a receiver. So I thought that made some sense there. Possibly a team that could call the Steelers about it. Jacksonville trade Dwayne Smoot. I was kind of looking into maybe a corner for them. Do they bring a guy like Sidney Jones back? I was thinking about it. Is it 100% necessary? Could they add a receiver? I thought about those things, but it's not a team that's going to go out and win a Super Bowl. Right now. They could. Dwayne Smoot, I think, is more valuable now than when he will be when he's a free agent. There's teams that always at this time of the year are looking for pass rushers, kind of desperate for it. So I think you get kind of a decent pick for him, maybe better than what his name. He's not really a big name, but he's been a decent player, and they're not using him a whole ton just because I don't think he fits. I think he's more of a 4-3 end, but they're trying to mix him in there a little bit. So I think you actually can get something decent for a guy like Smoot. So that's why I went that route. Texans should definitely be sellers. There's a couple pieces they can definitely sell with Jerry Hughes, Grugier Hill. Christian Kirksey I almost put up here. I want Eric Murray, though. Yeah, him like Christian Kirksey, Eric Murray. They still have another year on their deal. I don't think they're the answer, and they probably want to move on from that deal, move on from those guys. They're not using Eric Murray at all, though, right now. They're using Kirksey at least. So, guy they're not using has one more year left on his deal. Maybe some teams that need a safety, maybe they possibly can move on from Murray. That would make some sense there. The Saints... I haven't heard anything about David Onyemata, who's a very solid defensive tackle, kind of being dealt. But I was looking at the Saints when I was making this video, and I'm looking at they shouldn't really be buyers. They're always kind of tight in cap. They traded away picks. I think enough with the trading away picks. They're 2-5 right now. They need picks. Just things like that. So I'm looking at who's free agents upcoming this next year. While they're going to be tight in cap, they're going to have to kind of not as bad as the past couple years, but they might have to. Work with the cap space a little bit again, and just to get even. So will they be able to re-sign everyone? No. So who are some big time free agents? Onyemata, Marcus Davenport. Davenport's young, so if they want to bring him, because the Saints might be in a weird spot where they may have to think about it. Like, are we really win now? Like, I think that they're fully healthy, maybe, but that's just a major if at this point. Kind of 2 years in a row now. So Davenport they can re-sign probably for cheaper and kind of still try to reach his potential. He's been a little underwhelming. Last year looked really good though. But Onyemata is very important to them. But free agent, teams looking for interior defensive linemen. You might be able to get a pretty damn good pick back right now. You don't have to worry about extending them then in free agency. I just think the Saints should be sellers at this point, and maybe they won't be just because they kind of been insisting on winning right now. They've always been like that, but they're sitting at 2-5 right now. It's just a little weird. It's a strange sight, I suppose. But yeah, so this is kind of one I thought of when I was making this video. I thought it actually made some sense to me, and they could get a pretty good pick there. Bucks, and Cam Akers here. They could use another back. I know they have Fournette. I know they have Rachaad White. White kind of a receiver back type option, but they're not running the ball super well right now. They're always adding backs. They're always looking to add anybody. Really, I was looking for guards to give them in this video, but there's just none available. There's a shortage on guards. There's none available. Maybe there's a surprise one that'll be available, but maybe they could add a tackle for some insurance there. But it's maybe adding a running back. It looks like they could trade Keyshawn Vaughn. I don't know if there'll be any takers, but I thought Akers made some sense, and they have him kind of another year on they have him on another year on his deal next year. So went that route. Panthers went with trade Shaq Thompson, and this is an interesting one because Shaq Thompson is very solid for the Panthers. He's been solid. He's a captain on that defense. He's good for them. They don't, it's hard to say they must trade Shaq Thompson, but the more I'm thinking about it right now, they're selling, they're kind of rebuilding, and they're going to bring in a new staff next year, right? Thompson he's such a kind of like a unique type linebacker. They'll line him up in different spots. They'll blitz him off the edge, the inside, pretty good in coverage. And they're going to switch coaching staffs next year, so the scheme will it change a whole lot? Maybe. Will it change? It could be. It's at least going to be a little bit. And I've noticed with linebackers, especially the ones that are kind of unique that specifically fit their current schemes, once the scheme and the coaches changes, the linebackers just change so much, and we see that every year, all over the place. So there's a shot that Thompson, who's under contract next year as well, pretty pricey, but worth it for his talent. There's a shot that he isn't as good of a player because of the lack of fit compared to now. So for those reasons, I actually thought it made sense. Trade him because you can get some good picks from him. You're looking for good picks. You don't have to worry about paying him next year. You don't have to worry about the fit. They could even switch schemes completely to a 3-4 next year because they have guys that fit that, like Brian Burns, like Derek Brown. So those guys actually could fit it. So that's why the more I thought about it, the more it actually made a lot of sense to trade Shaq Thompson for those reasons, and I think they'll have some takers. Falcons, I have them as a buyer here. Another Bryce Hall team with the Bryce Hall edition. Casey Hayward's currently injured. They could use another corner. Bryce Hall happens to be very young, has some upside. Looking to run more man coverage. The Falcons actually running a lot more man this year compared to the last year, I should say. So that. And they have him next year. Pair with AJ Terrell, young, upside, cheap. They don't want to pay a big pick because they're still, they're not going to win a Super Bowl right now. They're still kind of rebuilding, even though they're not early in the stage because they're a pretty decent team. So it makes sense to get a young, cheaper option here for the Falcons, who could use a corner at the moment. Broncos also could use a corner. They also could use a running back perhaps, and thought about Cam Akers, guys like Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, guys like that. But do they go out and trade? They have a number of running backs right now, too. I know there's no great one, but they could use a guy that's under contract for another year, like a Cam Akers, to pair with Javonte Williams. Instead of pairing Gordon with Williams, it'd be Akers. So I really thought about that. But can they go, I don't know if they can afford to trade like decent picks right now after trading a lot away for Russell Wilson, and they're struggling right now as well. But they definitely could add a guy like Akers. It makes sense to me, but could use a corner pretty bad because the Ronald Darby injury, they have Damari Mathis playing, and then he kind of got picked on last game, which he was tight in coverage, but a little too tight, was getting grabby, obviously, a lot of flags. And so I think teams will continue to attack that, and they could look to add another corner. Sidney Jones of the Seahawks is available. I think he can fit their defensive scheme very well. It wouldn't make sense to go get a guy like William Jackson. It just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. To me. So Sidney Jones made sense. So I look at Sidney Jones, it look like a Cam Akers, those types of guys, but I like the fit here with Jones. So I went that route. Should be pretty cheap, and he could be solid. Even if Mathis is still starting, you definitely need a pretty good backup. You definitely need a pretty good outside guy or rotation guy too. So either way. Raiders going to get a familiar face. Nelson Aguilar, familiar face to the Raiders, who last time he was there, he was very solid with Derek Carr, especially downfield. Familiar face to Josh McDaniels too, who coached offense coordinator of the Patriots last year, is now the Raiders coach. Aguilar's coming from the Patriots, obviously. So it made sense for those reasons, and I think the Raiders could be looking for a receiver because they've had some injuries, just not enough options as well, and I think they kind of can get the deep ball going a little bit more with the Carr Aguilar combination there, and then that can kind of free up Adams to do, because they're kind of forcing Adams deep, which he can do that. He's a do-it-all guy, but he's really good kind of underneath as well, so that kind of can make everyone better here. So I think the Raiders could be in the market for a receiver for sure. I thought about Aguilar, I thought about Kendrick Bourne. Do they go all out and go for Chase Claypool? I could actually see it. And then a corner. I think they could use a corner as well, but they're about to get Anthony Averett back here, so maybe not because of that, but I definitely think they can use one still. So Raiders are a team to watch for some of these receivers And the familiar face of Nelson Aguilar is definitely a big one to watch. Speaking of, we got a back-to-back here. I think the Chargers should go out and trade for Aguilar as well. Just kind of fits Herbert ball. That deep speed, the deep ball, and they haven't really been throwing the deep ball nearly as much. And a little bit because Herbert doesn't have as much time, because of the play calling, but because of the receivers as well. It's Mike Williams is a kind of contested catch, sideline deep ball guy. They kind of need that speed guy. Palmer hasn't, he's been a little underwhelming. Keenan Allen's been out. Keenan Allen's kind of a do-it-all type guy, mainly underneath, intermediate throws. So adding a speed deep guy for Herbert could definitely open up what they're missing right now in that explosive offense. So I thought that made a ton of sense. How about Roquan Smith here? Familiar with Brandon Staley? Obviously, where he coached with Chicago in the past, and they definitely could use an inside linebacker guy there. It's a little different scheme than Staley was running back then. I could see it, but I think they like Tranquil a lot. Could they pair Smith with a guy like Tranquil? It's a possibility. They could use a defensive tackle. Could they add a Daron Payne, perhaps? I thought about that as well. Offensive lineman, could they add a Riley Reef, a Cam Irving? They had some center injuries, so Bradley Bowe's been another one. So the Chargers, you can bring some names up there. You can bring some names up, but I just thought this made a lot of sense. Really good fit, and it kind of brings you Chargers / Herbert ball kind of gets back to life a bit more, as it should. Chiefs went a little bold with Chiefs. Kadarius Toney's name's been thrown out there a little bit from the Giants. Who before this year and very recently too. Some people think he could be dealt. He's been injured this whole time, so he's getting close to getting healthy. Do they love him there? Maybe Wan'Dale Robinson, a similar gadget-type receiver. I think Toney does a little bit more downfield than Robinson, in my opinion. But, so could the Giants be okay with moving on from him for those reasons? And the Chiefs, I think it would fit the Chiefs very, very well. I think this could be a very poor man's type of Tyreek Hill for them. But, yeah, they're trying to replace Tyreek Hill with non-Tyreek Hill type players. Just because they have speed doesn't mean they're that shifty type of player that you can do a lot of things with. I think Toney could be that guy. I think the Chiefs would be interested in that. Chiefs could look at a receiver. Some people think running back. They got a number of running backs, though. But maybe right tackle, perhaps. Corner, they're getting McDuffie back. Linebacker, they should be getting Willie Gay back soon, but could use an upgrade there. A lot of people link them with pass rushes. Yeah, that could make some. Dwayne Smoot, guy from the Jags, could make some sense there. Jerry Hughes. I just really like the fit of Toney, and could they pull it off? I think it's somewhat realistic there. Cardinals, William Jackson. They definitely could use a corner. Corner's been playing a little better than expected. Maybe except for last night. Was that last night? Yeah, last night's Thursday night game against the Saints. Guys were getting open pretty easily. I guess the downside of this is William Jackson is looking for more a man coverage team defense, which the Cardinals have been under Vance Joseph until kind of recently. They've been running way more zone. It's kind of weird, and it's kind of worked here and there. But maybe a mixture of things. But I think they can make William Jackson work. They've been looking for corners, and they have not been able to land them. They get a guy like William Jackson, who I think could be solid in Vance Joseph's scheme, as long as they're mixing up, kind of going back to running more man, which I think he really deep down wants to do. And then he's under contract next year, which is a little bit of a risk because how good will he be? Will he be worth it? We're kind of on the books for paying him next year, a decent amount, but the Cardinals could afford it next year as well, and they kind of feel safe, like we feel good, like we have our corner for another year here coming up. So I thought that's why it made some sense. Really thought about putting Bradley Bozeman on here, the center from the Panthers, because I think he could be dealt, and they need a center pretty badly. They have Rodney Hudson, who's one of the best in football, but he's barely been playing. You saw it last year. He missed some games this year, and when he's out, there is snap issues. There's another one last night that luckily didn't end up costing them, but it's like every week. So Bradley Bozeman's a big-time one to watch out for the Cardinals. Like, it's definitely realistic that it can happen. Jackson's kind of a bigger addition here. Seahawks, a lot of people are talking about the Seahawks being buyers. I've seen them linked to a couple players, and they've been very good football teams so far this year. They traded Russell Wilson for a reason. They were smart. They realized, hey, we're not going to win anything major right now. Let's go get the picks that we can get right now. Let's build for the future. We're adding the picks. They know they're not going to win a Super Bowl, even though they're playing some really good football. So do they want to go out and spend a bunch of picks? I seen Roquan Smith being thrown out there. I just don't like the fit. I don't love the fit. I don't love paying the amount of picks they have. It doesn't make sense to me. I can see them going for a pass rusher. I've seen them linked to another Bear, Robert Quinn, which they, good fit. They could pay him in the future, but by the time they get things really rolling, which shouldn't take too long, he's going to be up there in age, but maybe I can see them. But if they go for a pass rusher like Cleveland Farrell, like a Dwayne Smoot, Guys like that, younger guys, maybe it's a possibility, but I still think they should and will be sellers. Sidney Jones isn't playing much for them. They're using the young guys as they should. There's teams desperate for cornerbacks right now because of injuries, just looking to get better. So Sidney Jones makes quite a bit of sense there to move on from him and get a decent pick. 49ers already traded for Christian McCaffrey, but I think they could add a guy like Bozeman. I was kind of looking for, could they get picks back? They traded a lot away from McCaffrey. Could they trade somebody? They're so injured. They're so short on guys that it's just tough to do that. So trading for a guy like Bradley Bozeman, they have Brendel playing center. They're a little limited there. He's had some penalties too, but he's been all right other than that. But just kind of getting another piece in there where they can kind of get better, or having that insurance piece because they have those injuries as well. Kind of a cheap option too in terms of the money, but more importantly on the pick you have to trade. Like it could be a very late pick, so that made some sense for that reason. Rams was kind of stuck between two guys here. I went with Kareem Hunt because they were very much in on Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers that we just talked about got him. It was kind of down to the wire, back and forth, Rams and 49ers, and the Rams' rival gets him. So not only did their rival get better, the Rams didn't get better. They didn't get that running back they wanted that could be involved in the run game, the pass game, and they need a running back because Akers is about to be out of there. They have Henderson. They think they can get better from there. He's had some injury concerns. Kyron Williams has been injured all year. So they definitely need one on top of it. So go get a guy that probably the closest guy you can find that's available. Closest guy to McCaffrey because of his running ability and his pass catching ability, and Kareem Hunt. I would love him on the Rams. I love the fit. Thought about Antonio Gibson as well because he's kind of one of those guys, but I thought Kareem Hunt made a lot more sense. But I almost went Riley Reef. I went Riley Reef for a couple guys here, and the Rams' offensive line's been extremely underwhelming, and their left tackle Joseph Noteboom went down, and they got a guy, Ulrich Jackson, who's playing guard going to play left tackle. And it's kind of a mess right now. So Riley Reef might be more realistic, but we know they're in the market, so that's why I almost went him. And we know that they should be in the market for that. We know they're in the market for a running back because they really tried to get McCaffrey, and now they're like, the 49ers just got better with one. We still need one. We got to try to match that somehow. So I thought Kareem Hunt for all those reasons made some sense, and they're not afraid to kind of go there, make that trade, so we'll see. I guess the big question with Hunt, I had him for the Bills and the Rams this one, is will the Browns trade him? And they don't really want to. I think he kind of wants out. Are the Browns going to extend him? Between the Rams and the Bills, they're probably more likely to trade him with the Rams. So we'll see. That's a guy. It's an interesting one there. Maybe they're more likely to trade Dearness Johnson. That's a possibility as well. Not as many takers maybe for that one, but he's a very solid back. But that wraps up this trade deadline video. We already have another one out with all the candidates, more guys we talked about on that one. There's going to be more videos to come, scenarios, predictions with landing spots, all things like that. I'll come up with some more too. So it's a pretty busy trade deadline year, and we're not even there yet, So we'll have our normal NFL weekly coverage as well. So join us for all those, the picks, the power rankings, score predictions, all that. So like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Any link you're looking for pinned in the comments. That's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.